circle. What's that? And you're out of the rain, so. Oh, you haven't turned me on. Oh. Hello? 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 Who's coming? Well, you're homeschooling him, so. What's happening? Hello? 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 Hello, Dwayne? Hello? Merry Christmas. It's raining. Hello? Look, you're not recording yet, are you? Righto. No, 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 they're going to record it. So, how about you introduce yourselves? Just something. You're curious. You have a curious mind.
Oh, I like the idea of stewardship. I believe that's what God put us here for.
Yep. All right. All right. Do you want to do so when he gives you the mic, you need to take it and hold it to your mouth so that they can hear. All right. I know that's a bit confronting, but this is for other people. So, yeah. Do you guys want to start? All right. So I sort of do a bit of a formal welcome, I suppose. All right. So, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Ken Long. You probably know by now that I love talking about stewardship. You know how the Greenies have activists? I call myself a stewardship activist because I like to stir up people's thinking around things and to make them look at things from different perspectives. So that's why I always have this divine perspectives graphic, because I think it's important that we look at things from different perspectives, but more important from God's perspective. So let's just start with a word of prayer. So dear Father in heaven, I just want to thank you that I have this opportunity to come to Northern Australia camp and to share some wonderful things about stewardship and about your love for us and about the way in which you want us to be intentional about building kingdom businesses. And Father, we just pray for your guidance today, pray for good interaction and good discussions and good learning from everybody. And we pray, Lord, that each of us will be blessed by having this time together for Jesus' sake. Amen. So what we're going to talk about is just give you a bit of an introduction to what this is about, but it's about Jesus, the model steward. What does that mean? We are stewards, so look, some of these things I cover a bit of what I do in other talks because a lot of it's related. We talk about some of God's blessings, talk about entrepreneurship, what that is, talking about integrating faith and business, and talking about business as mission. So do you ladies want to come into this seat here and just sit behind, or come into these seats here? Come right into the front. We're having an intimate circle today. All right, so I'm sure you all know the story of Ruth and Boaz in Ruth chapter 2. So Ruth was the daughter-in-law of Naomi, came back to Israel. They were in tough times because they'd lost all their money when they went to Moab, and things were tough. And so Naomi says to Ruth, go down to the field down there and glean. And gleaning was something that, farmers were instructed to do. They were instructed to leave parts of the field so that people could actually collect the grain and live, or make money even out of it. But Boaz went away. He was in Bethlehem. He came back to his farm and he sees this strange woman in the field gleaning. And so he says to his foreman, look, who's this woman? And so he told him the story. Boaz knew about the story. And so that was good because his foreman actually knew. You guys can come in closer if you want. The foreman knew that Boaz would actually help people. And all of that sort of thing. So the Bible is full of stories around business, even though you've never thought of that before. The Bible is full of stories around business. So if you look at Boaz was an agribusiness entrepreneur. He was a farmer, righto? But he was a good steward. His business was he understood the success was based on God's provision. He was grateful to God. And he treated his staff well. He viewed his fields as a source of income and a source of profit, but he also saw them as a trust from God, something that he would manage for God. All right? So he instructed, as I said before, his people to leave grain for these people in challenging times. And so this reflected his heart for God. So I just want you to think of the Bible as a textbook for business. Have you ever thought of that before? The Bible as a textbook for business? No? Well, it's amazing how much wisdom there is for business there. So, just want you to maybe share and we can interact here. Who can tell me some of the I am statements that Jesus made in the book of John?
I am the way.
I'm the way, yeah.
I am the vine, you are the branches.
That's it. I am the vine, you are the branches.
I am the truth.
Way, the truth, and the life.
Same, I am the way.
Yeah. That's it. That's all right.
I'm the bread of life.
I'm the bread of life. I'm the good shepherd. So here they are. You got most of them? Fantastic. But today I'm going to tell you about the I am statement that Jesus didn't make. All right? The I am statement that Jesus didn't make. So if you were here yesterday, it would have been a bit of a clue, because remember I told you that there were 1,000 texts in the Bible on money, 288 verses in the New Testament or in the Gospels on money, righto? And about 42% of Jesus' parables were about money as well. So the I am statement that Jesus didn't make is, I am the model steward. All right? I am the model steward. Now, do you think Jesus should have made that statement? Lily, just pass it, I think. Yeah, go on.
We can find that in his words without him having to say it.
Yeah, righto. And in his actions. So everything Jesus did, everything he said was around stewardship, wasn't it? And so, look, here's a few thoughts here. So he followed God's will every day. He lived a life that was filled with radical and sacrificial giving. He lived a service-filled life. He was single-minded about God's kingdom. Everything was directed. All his actions, all his decisions were based on fulfilling his mission for God's kingdom. All right? And he used his God's-given blessings with compassion. So everything he did came from his heart of compassion. So I've summarised it this way, righto? Put it up yesterday. God's blessings, God's way, for God's glory. And so for all of you, you're in business or thinking about business, that's what this is about. It's God's blessings, God's way, for God's glory. Righto? Remember that phrase. It's a really powerful phrase. So, sort of as I mentioned yesterday, on the fifth day of creation, the Godhead was talking and they said, what are we going to do tomorrow? I think they knew. We're going to make man tomorrow. We're going to make him in our image, and we're going to appoint him as manager. We're going to appoint him as a steward. Righto? And so God gave us our purpose the day before. And so, as I said yesterday, this is the first commission in the Bible, that we are to be stewards of God. All right? It's unequivocal. We are to be stewards of God. All right? And we're to follow Jesus' example. So, here's a chance. So, maybe pass the microphone this way. And everybody tell me some blessings that you have in your life. You don't have to give me details, just give me some blessings that you have in your life. Come sit down. You need to hold the mic up.
God blessed me to come down for this youth camp.
Righto.
Didn't have to pay, but I came down on the school trip.
There you go.
And I stayed.
All right. Hold the mic to your mouth, yeah.
Yes, God blessed me with many blessings to be here in this camp.
Can you give me an example of one of the blessings that you have?
Yes, for example, God gave me blessing for my beautiful children and grandchildren.
Yeah?
Yes.
Family. That's
family.
relational blessings.
Yes.
Yeah?
God's given me many talents that I can use for my community.
Yeah. Spiritual gifts, yeah.
God's brought me into the church recently, and I've met a lot of lovely people. And,
Righto. So God's given you salvation
yes,
and grace. That's a beautiful blessing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I feel very lucky.
Yeah. That's good.
God reveals himself to me.
Yeah? Wow.
Mine would be my husband, my family, and his peace.
When we gave up working on the Sabbath, God gave us more than we would have made if we'd kept working on the Sabbath.
That's a great testimony, isn't it?
Family and financial freedom.
Yeah.
Blessings of good health and family.
There you go. I think you've got most of the ones I said there. So God has given these blessings. So remember that phrase? God's blessings, God's way for God's glory. So you can see there on the bottom side of it, though, I've got business opportunities and ideas. So, God gives us business opportunities and ideas to make money for ourselves, but also to support his kingdom. Righto? So just remember this. It's a reminder to us as entrepreneurs. In Deuteronomy it says, and I've sort of paraphrased a bit, I do that regularly. Remember the Lord your God. He's the one who gives you, the entrepreneur or aspiring entrepreneur, the strength to be prosperous, the power to get wealth, the power to be successful, to fulfill the covenant he made to our ancestors. Right? So God gives us the power to get wealth. All right? But remember, it's God's blessings, God's way for God's glory. So, look, what I'm going to take you through now is what does it mean to be an entrepreneur? All right. So I'm not going to read all of these slides because you can read them and you probably have a fair idea. But the basic difference is this: to be an entrepreneur, it's about starting, developing, or scaling a business. So a lot of people start a business, but usually at the beginning you don't make much money because you've got to invest a lot of money and time and put in the hours, and you've got to start the business. That takes time. I'll give you these slides if you want, don't worry. But as a Christian entrepreneur, it's different. It's that, but it's aligned with biblical principles. So again, everything you do, everything you say needs to be aligned to the Bible. So what's our motivation? So generally most people's motivation in starting a business is to make a profit, and probably to build a business which they can sell later down the track. But you can see here for the Christian entrepreneur, it's a little bit different because it's around people, it's around developing people. So as a servant leader, servant leadership is about developing people. So it's developing your staff. It's about profit. Yeah, you need to make a profit. You've got to make a living. You've got to make a wage. And, you may want to contribute to the church as well. It's about the planet, doing the right thing from a sustainability perspective. But the big difference is this. It's around what is your purpose. And so we're going to talk a bit about purpose a little bit later, but what is your purpose for your business? And for us as Christians, it's about giving glory to God, but it may be more than that as well. All right? So clearly it's elements of stewardship. And one of the other big differences is who are your stakeholders. So in a business you have internal stakeholders and you have external stakeholders. So the internal ones are shareholders, employees, directors primarily. External, are your customers, maybe the community, the government, whatever. All right? So, yeah. So then, if you look about integrating faith, well, the typical non-Christian business, it's not really about faith at all. But again, from the Christian business, it's about how can, as I said before, how can you integrate this faith into your business, right? That's the real challenge. So that all of your business practices, everything you do, everything you say, the way you deal with your customers, how can that relate to what you know from your Christian experience? All right. So here, it's work-life balance, ethics. How do you make decisions? So in a Christian business, you make that based on biblical principles. All right. So, can faith and business go together? All right. So in business, we have this thing called a value proposition. So let's say I'm going to buy a phone. I go into the shop and they say, oh, this Apple phone's going to cost you, I don't know, $1,500. So I then make a decision. Is it worth $1,500 or not? So if I decide it is worth $1,500, then I hand over my money or my credit card, they give me the phone, and there's been a transaction's taken place. But that's what's called an exchange of values. And so what this author has said here is he said, look, basically this is what it's about from a Christian perspective. The gospel is business because it's an exchange of values. So if you look at a lot of Jesus' teachings, what was he trying to do? He was trying to change people's values. You look at the Sermon on the Mount, I nearly said the amount, but the Sermon on the Mount, that is about a change of values, isn't it? It's all about a change of values, righto? This is what Ellen White said. There is no branch of legitimate business for which the Bible does not afford essential preparation. So remember what I said before? The Bible is a textbook for business. All right, and I'll share a few other things. So when I was in Lebanon, I've just delivered a 2-week course in Lebanon, and every morning we'd have worship, and I'd give them worship out of the Bible for business. All right, and they were amazed. And some of these people were ministers themselves, but they were amazed that there was so much biblical wisdom in the Bible. All right, so definitely they can go together. And I'll give you some examples of that later. So if you look at these pie charts here, they show you where these things took place. Did they take place in the marketplace, or did they take place outside the marketplace? So most of Jesus' public appearances took place in the marketplace. What's that, 92%? It's a bit hard to read here. The miracles, again, most of those took place in the marketplace. And the parables of Jesus, they were either in the marketplace or about the marketplace. So, around, say, 85 up to 90, almost 100% of Jesus' interactions took place in the marketplace. All right, so he wanted to be amongst people. And so that's why if you guys are running businesses yourselves, then that's where you are. And in fact, most businesses interact with more people, particularly more non-Christian people, than churches do. All right? Yeah. Just think of that. So in your business, you get to mix with non-Christian people continuously, whereas in church, you might have 3 or 4 or 5 or 10, whatever, come to a church in any given week. Righto? So just to give you another example from the Bible, this is the ancient city of Corinth. On the top of that hill there's a big castle called the Acrocorinth. It's huge. And I was there last year, and this is the old city of Corinth. But in this city, Paul came, talks about Paul coming there in Acts chapter 18, and he came there and he met Priscilla and Aquila, all right? And they were all tent makers. So Paul was a tent maker. So Paul conducted his business there with them so that he could engage with the community. And, Paul didn't have to do that. Paul really could have relied on the church system or the supporters to give him money to live and to conduct his ministry. But he actually worked to do that because, as a tent maker, he would be mixing with other tent makers. He would be dealing with customers. He would be engaging with people. And so, we often hear this phrase, tent maker ministry, but that's why it's of value, because you're actually mixing with people. You're mixing with non-Christian people. And this is what Aquila and Priscilla did as well. So this is a story about a man called Robert Letourneau. Have any of you heard of Robert Letourneau? All right, I'm going to play a little video in a minute, but he was an amazing guy. He was uneducated. He loved to build things. So I'm sure some of you guys are really practical. He loved to build machinery. But when he was a youngster, he felt, oh, look, the only way you can serve God is to go into ministry. Have you ever felt that? I need to go into ministry to serve God. But this is what his pastor told him. God needs businessmen too. All right? God needs businessmen too. And I'll play this video and then I'll talk a little bit more about him, but you'll see his amazing life. Yeah, see?
There was this young man named Letourneau who in 1901 ended up leaving school and
do you want to sit here?
In a foundry so that he could help stores.
You can come in
And
closer.
while he was working at this foundry, he was, as a 14-year-old, a typical boy that was probably more ADHD than most, he would fiddle and play with the things that he had learned during the day, and he began to put together, formulate these implements that would go on machinery for agriculture. And in the course of all of this time and building his creativity, World War I started, and he ended up going into the Navy.
Yeah, sure.
When he came back from World War I, found himself financially pretty much destitute. He became frustrated with himself after a while because he didn't feel like his career was going anywhere. And in a really important conversation that he had with his pastor said to him, "Please understand, Robert, that God needs Christian businessmen." He had grown up as a Christian young man thinking that in order to be used for God's work, you had to be either a pastor full-time or work in the mission field in some foreign country. And he didn't realize that his business and what he was creatively coming up with could be used for God's glory. So he went home that day, talked to his wife, Evelyn, and told her, said, "Evelyn, I think I'm going to just start creating these things that I have going on in my head, these implements and these earth-moving machines, and I'm gonna start off with a new business partner." And she asked him who the partner was, and he quickly said, "I'm just gonna have God as my business partner." And his wife said to him one day, "Maybe what we need to do is stop giving God 10% of our money and us living on 90. Maybe what we need to do is give God 90 and us live on 10. It's not about how much of my money I give God. It's more about how much of God's money I keep for myself." There was this young man named Letourneau. Grown up as a Christian young man thinking that in order to be used for God's work, you had to be either a pastor full-time or work in the mission field in some foreign country. And he didn't realize that his business and what he was creatively coming up with could be used for God's glory. So he went home that day, talked to his wife, Evelyn, and told her, said, "Evelyn, I think I'm going to just start creating these things that I have going on in my head, these implements and these earth-moving machines, and I'm gonna start off with a new business partner." And she asked him who the partner was, and he quickly said, "I'm just gonna have God as my business partner." And his wife said to him one day, "Maybe what we need to do is stop giving God 10% of our money and us living on 90. Maybe what we need to do is give God 90 and us live on 10. It's not about how much of my money I give God. It's more about how much of God's money I keep for myself.
Going.
Hello? Oh. All right. So you can see here, I've got some numbers up the side. So here is all of the sorts of equipment that Robert Letourneau made. Righto? You can see it. Earth-moving equipment, bulldozers, graders, all sorts of things. So the numbers here on the right is the number of patents that this young man had. 300. Righto? As an uneducated man, but he had 300 patents. Righto? 70% is the percentage of Letourneau's earth-moving equipment that was used by the Allies in World War II. So 70% of the earth-moving equipment used by the Allies in World War II was his equipment. And 90% was the amount of tithe that he put. So this is what he said. By accepting God as your partner, no limit can be placed on what can be achieved. All right? No limit. righto? Is that a good limit? No limit. When you go into a partnership with God, you've got a partner closer and more active than any human partner you can ever get. All right? So for you guys in business, contemplating business, this is a great endorsement. One of my stewardship mentors was a guy called Mel Rees. I met him in about 1984 when he was about 84, but he wrote a book called God and Man Unlimited. So it's much the same sort of thing, God and Man Unlimited, right? So with God, there is no limit to what you can achieve. So a lot of my focus of this book, for those of you who haven't seen it, it's called the Model Steward Canvas. You can download it for free. If you just Google that, or you can scan a QR code I'll give you later. You can download it for free, a soft copy. I do have a few paper copies, but that's where this came from. So its business's mission is a business operated according to biblical principles, well, we talked about that before, biblical principles and values by a Christian entrepreneur, which aims to be a profitable business, brings glory to God, and has a kingdom impact. So some of you guys have been saying to me, look, we've been running a profitable business. We really haven't been doing the glory to God bit or having a kingdom impact. And so they are great aspirations if that's something that you want to do. And hopefully, even just being, as I said, the second dot point, it's being intentional about your kingdom purpose. All right? So maybe you don't know how to do it now, but if you pray about it, God can tell you how to do it. So it's intentional about your kingdom purpose and its impact on its staff, customers, suppliers, community. You have that focus on people, planet, profit, and God's purpose. And maybe you give a significant part of your profits for kingdom or charitable purposes. All right? So what do you think of that? Tell me who's got the mic. Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
My name's Collins. I was just thinking while you had the previous slide on, it's very interesting to watch how biblical principles were very aligned to business and entrepreneurship when we had systems of trade like barter trade and those commodity-based kind of traders. Because then when I came to you with a bag of salt and you had a bag of rice, for example, I would take what I need and not necessarily excessive. And, you would feel that I've given you a fair trade. So there was this exchange of fairness, there was less selfishness and greed. And then I played that back and I looked at like what the children of Israel used to do with their first harvest. How they'd bring their first harvest to the temple. And that's just recognizing that God is the giver of all these things. So all those principles, I could be wrong, but I think were much easier when it was commodities than when it's a currency-based system where I feel I have labored for this money and the reflex is to hold on to the 90% and get my arm twisted to get the 10% out, so to speak. And what that does then to me is it makes me realize that if I can keep the principles constant, even with the money, then I can use the example of the 1090 that the gentleman just did. And just a thought.
Yeah, look, I'm not suggesting you necessarily need to give 90%, but it's where does God lead you? Where does God bless and where does God lead? That's really the question.
I believe if you take the biblical principles and use the relationship of God with his people and apply that to your business, then, as you mentioned before, there's no limit. So when you can have an infinite income, it enables you to then pass on more than just your tithing, but you can continue to donate to the community and grow your community involvement and the faith of community with God's money enabling that.
Definitely. I'm going to play you a video right at the end from someone who actually grew up in this area, and she used her business for God, and I'll tell you she'll tell some stories, but I'll tell some stories as well, and yeah, perfectly right. Has anyone else got any thoughts? No? One more?
Because it's really thought-provoking. I was just writing it down, actually. I was thinking, when you look at our current society and you look at the people who are deemed to be successful in business, why is it that a big percentage of them turn to charity eventually after they've amassed their wealth and after they've done everything? I know there's all the taxation avoidance and all that, but there's something in there that we should all learn. There's a big point, because you notice that all of them are involved in some form of, if you look at their CVs, they say, I'm this, and I'm a philanthropist as well.
Yes.
And that says something about what we're discussing here in principle.
All right, so in business, this is what I see. There are businesses that are where there's undercover Christians, all right? Nobody really knows they're Christians. So a few of their staff might, but the customers don't, the bank doesn't know, no one else knows. At the other end, at the other side, you've got these extrovert Christians where everybody knows. It's on their website. Now, there are very, very few of these. Most of the ones I found were in America, because it's much more, I think, a religious society, but they're extrovert Christians. And I'm making no judgment. It just depends. So maybe I've called these the ambivert Christians. So they sit in the middle. So maybe some of their staff, some of their customers know they're Christians. Maybe their values are based on Christian values, but they're not necessarily expressed in Christian terms, and that's fine. And maybe they support Christian projects and kingdom values. So, if you're going to run a business, then you're going to be on this line somewhere. So just be intentional about where you want to be. And so, look, if you're a Christian business in the Middle East, well, you can't be an extrovert business probably, but maybe you can. But you have to make these sort of judgments of where you're going to be. As I said before, it's about being intentional. All right, so what is the model steward canvas? So the idea is that, look, starting a business can be a bit complex, right? Yeah, if you've ever been in business, it's a bit complex. There's all these loose ends and that sort of stuff. So what it is, it's a plan on a page to help you structure your business, to structure your business ideas, all right? So it helps you use God's blessings, God's way for God's glory, all right? So that's what it's about, and we'll talk about, I'll show you this more in a minute. And why is this important? So particularly for New Guinea, my last day in Lebanon, get an email from the South Pacific Division Stewardship Director saying, and he's a friend of mine, and I work with him, but he says, can you help us do something in New Guinea? All right, so, and look, these are just early discussions. Do we try and set up a co-op to help subsistence Adventist farmers sort of make more money so that they can do this, so they can help support their family better, help support their community better, help support the church better, right? So that's what the thinking behind a lot of this is. Give a man a fish, you have fed him for today. Teach a man to fish, you've fed him for a lifetime. Teach a man how to establish a fishing business. You not only feed him for a lifetime, but bring benefits to his family and the community and the church, all right? So that's the fundamentals behind it. And that's how this book came about, really, from talking to the General Conference. And they said, look, there's lots of countries in the world, Africa, other developing countries where, people don't have an income. So if we can help them start a business, start a successful business in your case, then this will be, as I said, benefit the family, the community, the church. All right? So that's the thinking behind this. So now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a business model. All right, so what a business model is really how you structure your business. So I've put this up here and says, look, who started a business? So you've started a business. Are you happy to talk to us? Could you pass her the microphone, please? So you've started a few businesses. Tell me some of the challenges of starting a business.
Oh, there are a lot.
Yeah.
Marketing, branding, but the last one, like I mentioned, which I said was mission and business intertwined together and went wrong. And what we learned is maybe there wasn't some thorough background information, research on how to do such a business and still do it as a mission wise. So one of the challenges which I can say is research or background information before you venture, or knowledge prior to that kind of business.
Yeah, do some research on the nature of the business that you want, who the competitors are, all of those sorts of things. So have any of you ever started a business? Lily?
I've started an art business, but I haven't really formally, like on paper, it kind of is there, but it's not really. But what I'm looking at now is that there are so many, like when I think of business, I think of, oh, this is the model for business, but there are so many models that I've never even heard of. And I'm like, well, I don't seem to fit like here, but I'm interested in helping people, getting young people and educating them and growing them and launching them into business. Like, I'm interested in people more than profit, and then I fit in somewhere else. But I got a list of I can't remember them now, but I'm just like, oh, I don't fit here. I've got to find out what model that I want to actually go into, because that actually changes things as well. So I was educated when I spoke to a few other business people, and they were like, well, you could do this, a partnership might not work for you. Maybe look at these other ones, which I'd never even heard of.
Anyone else got any thoughts? Just some of the challenges of starting a business.
So we have accommodation business, and basically we rely on large platforms such as Airbnb. So our challenge right now is, how do we do that without relying on one of those platforms?
Righto.
I was just going to say a major challenge is the regulatory framework of the businesses in different jurisdictions. So it's very different. I come from Kenya, East Africa. Very different regulatory framework. So different mindset, different strategies. Then you come to Australia, you do the same thing. So the regulatory framework in itself can be a challenge.
And in Australia, you've got states as well, so you've got all other issues. So I'm just going to play. Oh, did you want to say something?
I can just follow on from Colin's. Regulatory framework is pretty daunting, and it can put you on a back foot where you won't want to go forward anyway into business. So I've applied the Bible to ours, where if it appears to be unfair, corrupted, I look at where God would, I feel in prayer, God will lead us to what we can do within his framework, not within man's created framework for their own benefit.
All right. All right, so let me play this video, and this will give you a bit of a framework for what a business model is, and then we can have another bit of a chat. So what is a business model? All right, look, I'm going to simplify that. There was a lot of information there, right? It was short video, but as I said, I'll give you all of this later and you can watch it at your leisure if you want. So really it's just a simple representation of the complex reality of a business. So that's why I put that graphic there, because it's like business. You've got all these loose ends. How do you make something simple, logical, that works together? All right, so it's useful for understanding how a business is organized, who it interacts with, what its goals are, etc. And so it says it's a complex skill. Lily was right. I have a graphic on my computer that has 100 different business models on it. And then you can create multiple variations of those. So yeah, you've got to find the right one. So here it is in all its simplicity. It's about how do you create value, how do you deliver value to your customers, and how do you capture value? How do you make money out of it? All right, so let me give you an example. I'm working with some ladies in South Queensland at the moment. They have a ministry called GG Stories. I don't know if you've heard of it. They basically produce podcasts for children up to about age 10 and girls from about 11 to 15 or something, that sort of age group. They produce ebooks, they produce paper books, whatever. But I met them at a business and faith conference at Avondale in April, and it looked like that for the year they'd make about $10,000, which isn't a lot of money really if you're running a ministry like this. All right, so I don't know. I liked them, so I said, look, I'll mentor you, right, for nothing. So we got talking, and I'm thinking, well, how are they going to make some money? You know, they need to sell more books, or get your books into Coorong or something, or whatever, ABC. But anyway, I asked them some more questions, because usually developing a business model comes down to asking questions. And so what they told me was their podcasts. They've had 600,000 downloads of their podcasts. Wow. And they've got something like 20,000 subscribers a month. So their current model for the podcast is they're free. They give them away. So they upload them every month, and immediately they upload them, within half an hour, there's thousands and thousands of downloads of these podcasts. So that's what's called a freemium model. So what I said to them, you need to look at what's called a premium model. So premium is you give some stuff away, but it's a way to build a database, build a customer base, and then you can sell them some stuff. And so what they're working on now is to, 1 or 2 more podcasts a month, and they'll have a different fee. And it might only be $2 a month or something. It's not a lot of money, but if they were to secure like half of their database, they could easily make $100,000 just because they got their business model right. Now, just a warning, it's usually not that easy, all right? But, as I said, they had the asset. They had that customer base that was sitting there. So they weren't really leveraging the value. They were creating value, they were delivering value, but they weren't really capturing value. So do you see the difference? All right, so now with what we've put together, they're hopefully going to be able to capture value. So, they're now into Coorong. I've introduced them to Faith FM. So we're not sure where that discussion's going to go, but again, they might be able to give their things to Faith FM, but then that builds their brand. That gives more people listening to their free podcasts, which then can feed into more of their ones that people are paying for. All right. So I've introduced them to quite a few people, and just as I said, sometimes it's just asking yourself the questions or getting someone else to ask you the questions, but getting the business model right, as you said, Lily, is absolutely critical. But as I said, usually it's not that easy, righto? So, this guy is Milton Alphonse. So here you can see a variation of that last graphic, all right? So what I've had here is we create value, we deliver value, we capture value, but we also deliver kingdom value as well. So this guy here, he runs, I think, a big health insurance company in Brazil. He's one of the biggest there. He's huge, all right? So this guy, he grew up poor. Education was the key to him getting out of poverty. So he invests his kingdom value in many ways, but one of the ways he does it is to provide scholarships for children to go to school, or adults even to go to school. And he has provided more than 60,000 scholarships of some sort, righto? So when I was in Lebanon, one of the guys there told me his wife, she must have been in her 20s or something, and she was quite poor, but she wanted to be educated. So this guy told me his wife went to see this guy, and she didn't have an appointment, and the secretary said, "You can't see him, you haven't got an appointment." So she says, "No, I'm just going to wait here till I can see him." And so she waited, and he ended up giving her a scholarship. But this guy has put, thousands or probably millions of dollars into our church broadcasting network. Look, I'm not sure where exactly. In fact, at one stage he gave his business to the church, and the church wisely said, "No, you keep it because we don't know how to run this sort of business." All right? But that's how you can create kingdom value. So that's what, as I said, these GG Stories ladies, they're going to be doing as well. They're going to be creating more kingdom value because they're going to be investing in lives of young people around the world. All right? So this is the canvas here. All right? So you can see all these 12 different areas. You've got the business, what are the business goals. Now, all of this is in the book, which you can download for free. So you don't, and I'll give you a copy of it with some instructions in it. So what are your business goals? When you come up with business goals, you should use what's called SMART goals. I don't know if you've ever heard that term before. So they've got to be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant and time specific. All right? So, because quite often people say, I want to grow, or I want to make $10,000. Well, when? How? Whatever. All right? So that's why you need to have what are called SMART goals. All right? So what's your purpose? As I said, that's critical. What are the values? Now, clearly these will be biblical-based values. What's your scriptural imperative? So what your scriptural imperative, and I'll talk about this, is what is the text of scripture that really is going to drive your business? It's obviously something personal to you because it's your scriptural imperative. It's not mine. Is there a scripture? Is there a passage of scripture or even a Bible story upon which your business is going to be based? So the other thing here is, who are your customer segments? So what group of customers do you want to serve? What's the nature of the relationships you want to have with those customers? So you can't have the same relationships with all of your customers. People often think, I need to treat everybody the same. You can't, because some customers are more valuable to you than others, or whatever. But even from a kingdom perspective, that might flip that around as well. But you don't generally treat all your customers the same. And so this is where I told the guys in Lebanon, I said, think of Jesus. Jesus had 12 disciples, but he had 3 on the inside, didn't he? So again, you're not treating everybody the same. You treat them, respect them the same. The customer value proposition is, remember I talked about creating value. So what value are you creating for each of those customer segments? You don't usually have one value proposition for all of them. You may, but you may have different customer segments. And so this value that you offer may be slightly different for each of them, depending upon what their needs are. What are the key activities and resources that the business needs? Who are the key partners? Who are the key stakeholders? How are you going to manage your staff? How are you going to lead the business? Now, really, that's an easy one because that should be around servant leadership. what are your channels? The channels are how do you actually access the customer. So you're going to sell directly, or you're going to sell through Airbnb, you're going to sell through booking.com, Qantas, whatever, or is there some other way? All right? What's the cost structure? What are the major costs for the business? Profit? How are you going to price your product? What sort of profit margin you're looking at? And then how are you going to distribute the income after that? All right? Has anybody got any questions or thoughts on that? So the idea is that, look, you've got all that funny, crazy diagram where things are going everywhere. So this helps put it into place. All right? Any thoughts, questions?
It's like fishing. When you go fishing, I heard the story. This guy went fishing and he was with a whole other businessman, and this guy was a salesman, and his three friends were catching fish, and he wasn't catching any. And they said, "What baits are you using?" And he said, "Oh, I'm using such and such a bait." And the other guy said, "And what else?" And he said, "No, that's all." He said, "You're an insurance salesman. You use the same pitch on everybody, so you have to alter your game plan for everybody. That one box doesn't suit all."
Exactly. Any other comments, thoughts, questions? I'm going to look at some of these segments. So clearly we don't have time to do it all, but I'm just going to focus on a couple of these things which will give you a bit more, I suppose, business understanding. So all right, we'll keep moving. All right, so here's the revised canvas. So you can see, look, this is where we create value with our customer segments and relationships and our customer value proposition. We deliver value sort of in the second line there through our resources, our partners, and our channels primarily, and our staff. But you can create kingdom value everywhere. So you can, you're relating to your suppliers, how you allocate your profits, the people you deal with, your values, your goals. You can create kingdom value everywhere through the whole business. Righto? So let me tell you this story. So this lady, second from the left, is her name is Rita Kare. She's in Goroka, Papua New Guinea. This is when I was there in 2019. So she has a convention centre, a restaurant, and she provides accommodation. So Rita, she started off as a street vendor, just selling stuff on the street, food on the street, all right? After a while, she did pretty well at that. She was probably pretty entrepreneurial, I would say. She started a steakhouse, a restaurant, which focuses on local and international cuisine. But then this restaurant burnt down. But this actually was a blessing because it burnt down, it had to be rebuilt. But they got a loan from the bank and she was able to build not just a restaurant, but a motel to go with it. All right, she's got a conference room that can cater for 200 people and a 29-room hotel. So that's what it was when I was there in 2019. So what she does, though, on every Tuesday at the time anyway, she was bringing in women from the community and she was teaching them about business skills and things like that. So she was using her blessings God's way for God's glory. And she funded something like 28 Bible workers in the area. Righto? It's hard to get these sort of people to talk because they're usually very, very humble people, but we did get her to talk. But it's amazing, how she was using her business for God. Righto? So look, I'm just going to give you a few things on how to start a business, all right? So for those of you who haven't done it, or if you've done it, maybe you have some insight. You start off with a good idea. You do some market research, as you said over there. You create a business plan. In this case, you can use the Model Steward canvas, or there are other templates you can use. You've got to get some money, right? You've got to get some money to try and build the business. You've got to get your staff together. So that might be a leadership team. It might be key employees. So if you're starting a restaurant, you clearly need a chef. You need to register your business, if you've got a business name particularly. And then you've got to have fun, all right? So how do you select your business idea? So again, a lot of this is in the book. In the book, there's some step-by-step guides to how to do a lot of this stuff. So there's the book there, plus there's also a workbook which you can download online for free. All right? So look, there'll be things that you're naturally good at. So, I mean, Lily's obviously good at art, and so she's actually got a smallish business now providing services and training people in art. So you've got to do something that you're familiar with, that you're comfortable with, you like usually. Colin, have you got a business, Colin, or you? Can you give?
So, two areas, healthcare and service provision.
Righto. So there's something you know a lot about, presumably. Hopefully.
Learning as we go.
Learning fast. All right. So, yeah, so what are you good at? So it gives some examples there. It says there, a person with a short attention span might not want to consider accountancy. But if you've got a good programming skills, then you could do web development. So there'll be things that you are good at, things that they may be hobbies in many cases. Obviously, you're good at property development or something, are you? No, you've got the accommodation.
It is small. We started off with one cabin. We've now got 3 and looking at expanding, but we're putting God first. So wherever He takes us, that's going to be the direction we take.
Yeah. All right. So, so here's a bunch of questions. So I'm not going to go through these. This is all out of the book. All right. So it's just an idea to prompt your thinking about what sort of business you might start if you haven't started a business. And clearly down the bottom it says, pray about it. How can your business advance God's kingdom? All right. So another good thing is, what problems does it solve for a customer? All right. Because a lot of businesses think they have a good idea for a business, but it's not solving a problem that anybody has. So I used to work for this company that was selling IT security. They took this stuff out of defense, which is very, 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 very secure, and they thought they'd be clever and sell it in the commercial marketplace, which was really dumb. All right? So they weren't solving a problem that the customer had. Righto? They were serving a problem in defense forces, but they weren't solving a problem that commercial businesses had. Identify where you can provide a better solution. So curiously, when I went into this job, I had no IT sales experience. I did one subject at university on IT security, and I was talking to hardcore IT security people. But there was a sales manager and 3 salespeople. I was the only one who sold anything. All right? Because what I did was that this device, in fact, while it was the most secure, it enabled people to do things more productively. So I sold it as a productivity tool, not IT security. So the other thing is when you're selling you're not always selling what you think you're selling. All right? So that's why it comes back to understanding the customer, understanding what their needs are, and defining your product from their perspective. Another way, you can be cheaper than other businesses, but be very, very careful about that, because what happens is that you come in cheaper and they go whack. The other people, they've been around a long time, they've got deep pockets, they can wipe you out very, very quickly. I went into the gas industry. I was headhunted to head a unit targeting gas companies in New South Wales, and we were to take on the big monopoly provider. And so we would come in with a good deal, and then the other guys could come in and go whack. So our deal was the best deal, but then suddenly it evaporated. All right. So we were then dealing with consultants. So after a while, I said to the consultants, look, if you guys want to have a competitive market, you've got to let us win some deals. So we started to win some deals, but don't fight people on price, because you can't win. All right. You can't win. All right. So here's another way. Look what's happening in terms of trends. Here are some trends. e-commerce, eco-friendly stuff, technology for working remotely, personalized products. So these are probably not things that you're going to be looking at, but just again, think of what trends there are that you could ride the wave of. All right? Research, absolutely critical. But again, you need to ask the right question. So this company that I work for, they did research. They spent $50,000 on research. It was one of the best research houses in the world, but they didn't ask the right questions. They didn't know the right questions to ask, even though they were very, very smart people. It was $1 billion Australian company, but their expertise was in one area, and this wasn't their expertise. All right, so how much does it cost? How much can you earn from the business? What barriers to entry are? So this comes back to what Colin said, regulatory barriers. You might need licenses, all these sorts of things. What are the startup costs? What knowledge do you need? All right. Some other things, some challenges. How do you find good employees? How do you make sure you've got an online presence, managing time, all these sorts of things. So there's some other challenges. But so 1 in 5 businesses fail. Why do they fail? They fail because of lack of funding, poor management, weak business model, as you said, and ineffective marketing. Right? So these are reasons why businesses fail. So you need to get those things right. All right, so now we're going to talk about purpose. So a guy called Simon Sinek said, look, most businesses know what they do. All right, so I know that I make this widget. You know you sell accommodation. You know you deliver art classes. All right? Less companies know how they do it, because quite often how you do it is the way that you differentiate your product, because two people can do the same thing, but how you do it might be the thing that differentiates you from your competitors. But he said very few businesses know why they do it. And this is the critical thing. Why do you do what you do? All right? Why do you do what you do? And so Simon Sinek, look him up. It's probably one of the most watched YouTube clips on YouTube. He talks about start with why. All right? So this is around purpose. What gets you up in the morning? So for me, I like to live a generous life. That's what gets me up in the morning. But as Christians, there's something else. We have a who. All right? So few businesses have such a compelling who as a Christian business owner. Our who provides the focus of our why. And so why? Because we're stewards. That's one of the reasons. We want to use God's blessings, God's way for God's glory. But who? Our focus is Jesus. So this is, I've expanded Simon Sinek's golden circle to make it the model steward golden circle. Anyone got any thoughts on that? Do you want to just move over a little bit? Anyone got any thoughts on that? No? Make sense? All right, you like the idea. All right. So purpose. So what is it that gets you up in the morning? So this is one of those extrovert companies that I was telling you about. This is Chick-fil-A in the US. It's a fast food chicken company, but this is its purpose on its website, on a lot of its collateral, on its corporate documents. It says Chick-fil-A's purpose: to glorify God by being a faithful steward of all that is entrusted to us, to have a positive influence on all who come in contact with Chick-fil-A. Do you like that? Simple. From a Christian perspective, it's powerful. It talks about stewardship, so it must be good. All right, so that's a very simple purpose statement that you could cheat or adapt, photocopy it, or adapt it, but come up with your own. All right? So this is another company, Buy on Purpose. So one of the problems when you're selling stuff is that often you feel like I'm selling a commodity. What a commodity is look, it's all the same, so therefore we can only compete on price. Righto? You ever feel like that with accommodation? Yeah, we can only compete on price. So what this company in the US does, they sell stationery. So when it comes to stationery, a ream of paper is a ream of paper is a ream of paper. So it then comes down to price. But what these people say here is, look, we're going to give 50% of our profits, 50% of our profits to charitable purposes in our region. All right? So when they go in to talk to you about stationery, they don't talk about stationery. They talk about how their money's being used for charitable purposes. So if you're buying stationery and the price is much the same, you're going to go with them because their money's being used in a very positive community way. So again, think what your purpose is. So their purpose is to donate millions of dollars to our non-profit partners by becoming one of the largest independent retailers in the US. All right? Here's another purpose statement. I belong to God. He created me to accomplish his plan, his purpose and his plan. I'll be pleased with his work in my life because he is pleased with his work in my life. You like that? Yeah. I will be pleased with his work in my life because he is pleased with his work in my life. Yeah. All right? So let's just talk about Christian values now. So can you give me some examples? Maybe you can pass this around the circle again. So let's bring it this way. Let's come up with some values that you might think is a good Christian value for a business. Can you think of one?
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment. That's all right. Pass it on.
I don't have a business, but I can.
But just think, let's assume you were in business, what would be a good Christian value, one Christian value that would be good?
To benefit my community.
Righto? Have a strong community focus. That's a good value, yeah?
Honesty.
Honesty, yeah, definitely.
I don't know. Sharing.
Sharing, yeah?
Generosity.
Generosity. I love generosity. It's one of my favourite words. You knew that, didn't you?
Pretty much the same as the last two. In our accommodation business, we have gardens and orchards, and we often give free vegetables and fruit to our customers.
Righto.
Integrity.
Integrity, that's always a good one. So we have a friend at the back here. Do you want to contribute? You can come into the circle if you like.
I actually have to go, but the word for me is just being reliable, which is like trustworthy.
Yep, reliable is always a good word. You can't go wrong with that word. So they're all good ones. You don't want to contribute one? All right. So here are some values here. Look, this is what you said. Integrity. So there's a Bible text to go with it. All right. Customer service. We should have got that one, shouldn't we? But basically the customer service is about the golden rule. Treat other people the way you want to be treated yourself. Excellence. These are all biblical values that we can have in our business. So buy on purposes values is excellence. We'll give our best in everything that we do and provide quality products to all our customers. We will treat each other with dignity and respect that each person deserves. That sounds Christian, doesn't it? Integrity. We will maintain the highest ethical standards in all our interactions as a company and individually. Selflessness. We'll always put our customers first. Serving our customers will be our number one priority. So let me just ask, I'm going to give you a quick quiz here. So imagine that you're the CEO of a construction company. You've poured a concrete job and it should take 24 hours for the concrete to cure. That means you can work on it again, all right? But there's a consultant who has to certify it and he says it's going to take 72 hours and it's going to cost you a fee. You know what a fee means? Before he will certify it. He says if you pay him the fee, he'll certify it in 24 hours. But if you don't, it's going to cost you $10,000 extra because of the delay. What are you going to do? What's that?
You'd be paying him the fee, wouldn't you?
The thing is, it takes 70 to, just wait, with concrete it takes it. I thought, yeah, doesn't matter.
Colin was the one who said integrity. He's come from Africa. He would know these situations. What do you say, Colin?
Like I said, sometimes it depends on the jurisdiction. But anyway, on a serious note, it's a tough one, this one. But I think in my situation, I would go the integrity way.
And not pay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So this case study is based on this man here. So this man here, Nehemiah Lee, he worked for a construction company. And everything was, you had to pay bribes at every level. So when you tendered for a job, even when you won the job, then you want to get paid. There was delays. He called them toll gates, basically. He said every step of the business process, there was a toll gate. So he decided to leave that business where he was employed and start his own business. He started this business called Nehemiah Reinforced Soil. But how did he get his first contract? Right? How did he get his first contract? Because he wasn't going to pay anybody. Righto? So ultimately, he won his first contract. All right? And he's been very, very successful. He's now in many, many countries in Asia. But he has been recognised by the industry for his integrity. Righto? So you can see here, though, his vision to glorify God in and through business. Let your light shine before others that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father. And here, to start a business and to conduct it with integrity. So here's his values. Number one, integrity. Right? Go the extra mile, servanthood, innovation. We absolutely refuse to indulge in bribery or practice any form of mismanagement whatsoever. All right? So, that was him. So now we're going to talk about the scriptural imperative. So what's the scriptural imperative? It provides the passion, the drive, the energy for the business. And so it's probably some sort of text of scripture that you consider important in your life. So for me, I had breakfast with some people this morning and they met from across the world, and they said one of the things that drew them together ultimately is they had the same favourite Bible text, and it was mine as well, Proverbs 3, 5 and 6. So, that might be your scriptural imperative. So for Nehemiah Lee, those who walk righteously and speak what is right, who reject gain from extortion and keep their hands from accepting bribes, who shut their eyes against contemplating evil, they are the ones who will dwell on the heights, whose refuge will be the mountain fortress. Their bread will be supplied and water will not fail them. All right? Robert Letourneau's was Matthew 6:33. So he was going through some tough times, and he said, look, God brought this home to him. Things weren't going so well. He said he was chasing material things. And he said, God wants to cooperate with us to cooperate with his program. But so this was his scriptural imperative. Do any of you have a favourite scripture that could underpin your business?
I really like the good work that God has started in you, he will complete unto the day of the Lord Jesus, Philippians 1:6.
Righto. Good. That's encouraging. It's good guidance. Any of you others got any thoughts? No? Not at the moment. All right. That's all right. The idea is to sow the seed so that you can keep thinking about it. All right. The other thing you can do is you can personalize the scripture to makes it more impact. So Proverbs 3, 5 and 6. In my business, I will trust in the Lord with all my heart and lean not on my own understanding. I will submit my business plans and strategies and endeavours to him and claim his promise that he will show me the right way to go. You like that? What's that? Righto. That's Proverbs 3, 5 and 6. Righto. All right. We've got the same ones. So when it comes to stakeholders. Look, we talked about this before, so I'm not going to spend too much time. But remember, it's the ultimate stakeholder. It's Jesus, God. How do we use God's blessings, God's way, for God's glory? All right, now some of this stuff is a bit of theory, all right? Bit of theory. So when you're starting a business, you're going to hopefully you'll have a lot of customers, and you've got this big group of customers, and you've got potential customers. So what you do is to segment them, to break them up into groups, all right? So if you're selling accommodation, you've got people, I suppose, they might be people who want holidays, or they might be business people. I don't know, what other sort of, maybe give them the mic and what other sort of business groups?
Well, where we live, there's a lot of fishing. So there's a lot of people who come there to fish, and there's a beach. So everything's aimed in that direction, but we want to take it to become a health retreat.
Righto.
And everything else is just a bonus.
All right. So you'll have your recreational fishermen. Is that right?
Yes, recreational fishermen. Then you've got the surfing people, beach people, boaties. So a lot of it's centered around that, and others it's just for a getaway from the city.
All right. So what you'll do is you'll sit down and say, look, here's the potential list of customers we could have, and we'll break them up into groups. So that's what segmentation is. So then what you do is target. So you say, look, I can't reach all of those groups. In fact, I don't want to reach all of those groups. Some of them will be more appropriate to our business, our location, all of these sorts of things. All right? So then what you do is you develop a value proposition or a positioning statement for each of those different segments. All right? So that's why it comes down to how can I get my message across to each of those people? And it may be similar message, but it's probably going to be slightly different. Righto? So this is the model. It's called the STP model. If you Google it, you'll get a diagram, something like this. But then once you've done that, you've then got to work out how are you going to communicate to those people. All right? And we'll just... So, and I'm not going to go into this. All of this is in the book. Right? So there's different ways you can segment your customers. So you can segment on the basis of geography. So, so some of your customers might be local, some might be from North Queensland, some of them might be from Northern Australia, some of them might be from the rest of Australia, some of them might be online, all right? You can segment by demographic. Demographic is personal characteristics, their age, their income, single, male, female, etc., all right? I'm not going to go into all this because, as I said, you can read it. So this is how segmentation works, all right? So basically you've got this massive customers, and what you're trying to do is sort them into groups that have the same characteristics, all right? If only it was as easy as this. But this is just to give you the idea, because on the left before, we were just dealing with the massive customers. And quite a lot of businesses just treat all of those customers the same. So there you go. If we're just geographic segmentation, we're looking at local, North Queensland, Northern Territory, rest of Australia. But you work out what works for you. All right. So targeting. So how are you going to target it? So you've got this big group of customers. What you're going to do is look at profitability. Is it a profitable group? Is it a big group? I mean, if the segment's only 2 customers, then that's not a very good segment to target. Do you have a point of difference to your competitors? Because at the end of the day, your value proposition is about having a different proposition to your competitors, how you're better. And so a few other things here. Their willingness to pay your price. So if you're near the fishing spots and no one else is close by and yours is 5% dearer, then they'll probably come to you because of convenience. All right. Lifetime value of the customer. So lifetime value is how much money can you make out of those customers over the longer term. So it's no good just getting a transactional customer, getting them once. You want to get a customer Yeah, time and time again. So it's a good example. These fishermen, they might come back once a month. So that's the lifetime value. So this is how you segment, all right? And so we're going through this pretty quickly. What we're doing is just sowing some ideas in your head, and as most of it's in my book, you can read it, download it for free. So that's the steps. So see here, look, in segmenting, there's 3 groups. Then here, we're just targeting one group, and now we're working out how to market to that group. All right? So this diagram's called the marketing mix. So just think of 2 things. You've got a product and a service. All right? So this is a product, right? So if I want to go into a shop, I can go and I can pick this up. I can feel it. I can take photos with it, so I can see how it is. All right? So for the marketing mix for a product is this. All right? What sort of product is it? What's the price? How are you going to promote it? Where am I going to sell it? All right? But for a service is different. All right? A service is intangible. So in many respects, accommodation, it's physical, but it's also more a service as well. So if you're going to go to a lawyer, I used to be a lawyer, how does anyone know if you're a good lawyer or not? They really don't. They can only go by what someone else has said, but at the end of the day, they don't know whether you're making good legal judgments or whatever. And so with a service, what you have to do is often create things which emphasize your service. So if you go into a hotel, maybe you do this in your accommodation, you go into the toilet in the hotel, what do you find with the toilet paper, toilet roll? Now, the corners are always folded, aren't they? So that's an indication. It's called tangible. It's a really queer word, tangibilizing the evidence. So in other words, service is intangible. How can we let people know about the quality of our service? All right. So, yeah. And one way to do that, particularly if you're selling a service, is case studies. Because if you say, "Oh, my place is the best there is," I discount that because you're saying it about your own place. But if one of your customers says, "Oh, this place is fantastic. It's located so close to the fishing places, and these guys, they can give us so much information about the fishing spots and the best place to go," it's worth coming back. Added value, yeah. All right. So for service though, service is around people. All right. What they say in terms of service is the people are the product. All right. So in many cases, you can't judge the quality of the service except by the personal interactions you have. The processes, you've got to have good processes to support your services. And what I just talked about is physical evidence. So they talk there about packaging, cleanliness, and that sort of stuff. All right. So we're going to talk about value proposition, because this is one of the key things, value proposition. All right. So what is the value proposition? It's the sum of the offerings and experiences. All right. It's everything that you do delivered to your customers during all their interactions with your business. So for you, it's, from when they log on, whether it's Airbnb or booking.com or whatever, if they ring you up and ask you a question, how you talk to them, if they leave a message, when do you ring them back? Do you ring them back 3 days later, or do you ring them back half an hour later? Can you solve their problems? Do you want her to say something? No, it's all right. So it's the whole thing. All your products, services, and solutions, and their functionality. It encompasses everything. It's important how they experience your product and your company, and it's their experience through every touch point. So just think of what are the touch points. So quite often what businesses do, particularly services businesses, they map every touch point, every interaction with the customer to see how they're doing it, and even ask the customer sometime. All right. So this is one of the biggest things about business. So you can have the best value proposition. I'll give you an example in a minute, but if you can't communicate it, it's no good. So some people have no value proposition, or they think they don't. They've got a great one, but they've never identified it, or they don't know how to communicate it effectively. But remember, it's always relative to your competitors. So let me tell you about this company. This company is a Darwin company. It's called HIQA. So what they do is they run an infrastructure lab. It's based in Darwin. and they test soil compaction, concrete, all of this stuff in road construction. All right, so I was working with them. I've done a lot of work in the Territory. In 4 years in the Territory, 3 of my clients won the Medium Telstra Business Award and 2 of them won the overall Business Award. So I've done a lot of work in the Territory. Love going to the Territory. Anyway, these guys, I did some work with them and they applied for this Telstra Award, and I'm reading the report and I'm thinking, oh, you're not as good as you think you are. And they weren't. But they were. But what he said was, look, the service I offer is superior to my competitors, but I'm a little bit dearer. All right? And this is often the case. Often people are a little bit dearer, service is way, way better. But what happens is you say, I've got great customer service. The competitors say, I've got great customer service. But unless you can explain why yours is better, they just discount them and say, all right, we'll just go with the cheapest. All right? So what I said to him is, I said, look, go to your customers and tell them, look, I can show you how to make sure your tests get approved. All right? I'll give you the process, what's required to get your tests approved. Right? Because if the test fails, then that might mess up the whole road construction schedule, will delay the project, incur additional costs. All right? So he did this. He went to his his customers, and his business grew from 3 million to 5 million in 6 months because he could sell his value proposition. All right? So understanding what your value proposition is critical, but then being able to communicate is even more critical. Right? Any questions on value proposition? No? You sound like you have a question. No questions? All right. So this is absolutely critical to your business. So remember, you've got customer segments, and for each of those customer segments, you need to have a value proposition. It may be based on the same value proposition, but you've got to be able to communicate it effectively. And a good way to do it, as I said, is with testimonials from your customers. And another key thing, if you have those testimonials, what I always do is I highlight the key words that I want the people to read so that their mind is drawn immediately to those words. So you can see often in my presentations there, you can see. Your eyes drawn to those things, and so that's what they'll read. When someone reads your website, they will read what you want them to read. So highlight the keywords which relate to your value proposition. All right? So how do you test it? So it's got to be clear, concise, easy to understand. Does it solve a problem for the customer? All right? So if it solves a problem and you can explain why it solves a problem, it's a good value proposition. How specifically does your value proposition help your target customers? Well, what matters most to them and their customers? Is it different from your competition? And you've got to provide support. All right, we're getting to the end now. All right, so one of the routes to market, or one of the key things, is how do you actually access your customers? So you can see down the bottom, how do you create awareness of what you do? How do you provide evidence so that the prospect can evaluate what you're telling them? Because they're going to be evaluating you against what they call a consideration set. So there might be 3 other businesses or whatever they're going to evaluate. How are you helping them evaluate? How do you help them purchase? Then how do you deliver after sales and loyalty? So there's 2 sides to channels. One is communication. So typically you use these things here like TV, radio, one thing I've heard here, and one thing I heard when I was in Lebanon, they talked about this people of peace, and I loved it because basically, and you would probably know this in some of your communities, maybe there's somebody in the community, and I always thought it needed to be the top man or the top woman in the community that would, you build a relationship with them and then they give you access to the community. But when I was in Lebanon, there were these guys, they were running this centre of influence in Egypt, and there was this lady there, and she came to the guys who were running it, and she said, look, you're providing preschool for my younger child. My sister and I, we're doing English lessons, but I've got a 10-year-old boy, and you've got nothing for him. Can you give him, I don't know, that's what they said, ballet, that seemed a bit odd, or taekwondo, or whatever. But the guy said, look, sorry, I'm really busy at the moment. I don't have time to do, at the moment. But she came back, she was quite persistent, and she said, soccer. And he said, oh, all right, well, I have Friday mornings off. I'll do it then. But he said this to her. This is a Muslim lady in an Adventist centre of influence. And he said, you get me 16 children, and I'll put on this soccer training for them. And so she came back, she signed up 21 kids, she collected the money, and so she's like the manager for this little soccer group. All right, so she was the person of peace. So I think sometimes in some of these communities here, it's important you have this person. I'd never heard of the term before, but it's what Jesus said to his disciples: find a person of peace, and they might be your channel to open a market. I think the guy from, where is he? Catherine told me, they've converted someone and they've got a relative in this other community, and that's their person of peace to get into that community. So find out, there may be people who can provide you access to markets. All right. So when I was in the electricity industry, it was me, and my job was to target Sydney. Sydney's a big place. So I rang this guy who managed a lot of shopping centres, and I said, can I flog you some electricity? He must have liked me. So anyway, he says, when I'm in the city next, I'll come and see you. So he rang me up and he says, look, I'm too busy. I can't come and see you today. I don't have time. But he was coming into the city. And so I said, just meet me out the front. We'll just drive around the block a few times and we can talk. So I talked to him and built the relationship with him. He went out to tender. We came fourth. Not real good, all right? But he said, I want to do business with you. So we changed a few things. We got up to second, and I secured 50 shopping centres, right? Big shopping centres, some of the biggest shopping centres in Sydney. So that was my channel to market. So always look for who you can partner with, who can give you access to market. So for you, Airbnb or Booking.com, they're your channel to market. But there may be other channels. So clearly you're looking for that. What are your channels to market? All right, so this is a bit of interesting stuff. So Lily, come up the front here. I'm picking on you because I know your name and I can remember it. But all you better say to me is, but I'm a brick maker. All right. So Lily, your name is Bezaleel. And if you're going to start your Christian business, so you guys, it's quite overwhelming, isn't it? Starting a business, righto? So this is Bezaleel, all right? So you need to look at the screen too. So Bezaleel, I want you to make seven golden candlesticks. So what do you reckon?
But I'm a brick maker.
Oh, all right. Well, what about this altar of incense?
I'm a brick maker.
I'm a bit slow, am I? What about this? The bronze altar of burnt offerings.
No, I still only use bricks. I can't make that.
All right. All right, so Bezaleel's excited. You can sit down now. Overwhelmed, worried, because been given this massive responsibility to make these things. So I reckon Bezaleel was a brickmaker because they were slaves in Egypt, right? That's what their job was, to make bricks. So how did he go from being a brickmaker to making this stuff? Anyone got any ideas?
God called him to do it. And God, I've heard that sometimes God can actually just give that information to somebody. I've heard stories where they've prayed for something and it's like this. It happened to my uncle, actually. He wanted to be a builder, had no skills and he had no money, and he prayed that he wanted to be a builder. In the morning, he woke up and he started to build. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? But it actually happened. And, most of us have to study and learn, but sometimes if it's because it was to do with the Sabbath, he couldn't work where he was working. He wanted to start his own business, but he didn't have all those skills. But he needed to support his family, so God gave him what he needed.
Perfect. All right, here's the answer. Exactly what you said. So God said to Moses, I've chosen Bezaleel. I have filled him with the Spirit of God. This is what Lloyd was talking about. filled him with the Spirit of God, with wisdom, with understanding, with knowledge, all kinds of skills. Get this, to make artistic designs for work in gold, silver, bronze, to cut and set stones, to work in wood, and to engage in all kinds of crafts. So we've got a guy who's gone from being a brickmaker to an expert artisan in multiple disciplines. Righto? So Lily's told you a story. This happened to me as well. So in 1985, I ran a program in Sydney, Greater Sydney, on stewardship. And I had to do lots and lots of writing. And my writing skills went like this. So typically, you learn over time. But for me, that's what happened. My skills went like that. And so what I say to you is, if you're doing things for God, God can do this for you. All right? God can accelerate your learning. God can give you expertise. God can do amazing things for you. All right? So even though you feel you're unqualified, God can do extraordinary things. So as I said, brickmaker to expert artisan in multiple disciplines. What's that? Keep the faith, yeah. So there's the canvas. I'm going to give you a copy of this, but if you just Google Model Steward Canvas, it will take you to the General Conference webpage. You can download the book, you can download the workbook, you can download these templates as well. I do have a few copies of the book if you want to buy them, but they're really only for convenience more than anything else. So now, look, I'm just going to play you a video now. So, any of you from Bowen? So this lady grew up in Bowen. Her name is Lorraine Hendra. Her name was Lorraine Martin. And she ran a business. So, don't know. Anyway, I'm going to just play this video and just hear her story, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it, and then basically we're finished.
Helmet going just fine. We were a good team. He was the dreamer, and I was the doer. It wasn't long, and we were able to build our own factory in Stoddart Road. And then we needed more space with 2 more factories down the road. After 9 years of married life, life was good. We had no debt. We had no overdraft. God just kept blessing our business. And soon we got the recognition of overseas companies who wanted us to distribute their products through Australia. Then the unthinkable occurred. That night going home, I came upon a roadblock. There were flashing lights, there were screeching sirens, there were police cars everywhere, there were tow trucks rushing, there were ambulances screaming down the road. And I was told that there'd been a fatal head-on collision just up ahead. In the distance, I could see my husband's white car totally crushed. And then I discovered his body lying beneath a plastic sheet on the side of the road. Next morning, I thought I'd woken up from a dream, but reality started to sink in when there became a non-stop stream of flower arrangements arriving at my door and at the factory door. So many people had been touched by Norm's life, and tributes came in from around Australia, never ending. I don't remember much about the funeral. I was pretty dazed. All I can remember is that they had to get the police to conduct the traffic. And there were just crowds and crowds of people. I did a lot of walking and I did a lot of crying. And I did a lot of straight talking to God. I didn't know what the heck he wanted me to do through all this. I was pretty worried about the workers feeling a bit insecure because Norm Hendra was Sydney blinds and screens in their eyes. And I didn't want anyone to headhunt some of my very good workers. So 1 week after the death, I went to the office and sat in his chair at his desk. Rather dazed. I just wanted to give them continuity. I ended up doing a private deal with God. I agreed to take it on, running the business, if he would guarantee to help me. I told him that we'd all draw our wages, but all the profits I was willing to give to the church. There was one proviso. He had to give me 12 months without any big major hassles. It was a massive learning curve. It was so hard finding out the details of what Norm used to do. But we worked really hard and really long hours. 60 hours a week was normal, and things just kept going on the same. I never changed anything. We just kept doing whatever Norm did. I never worried about the getting of sales. They always came in abundance. Our job kicked in when we got the sales to make the products, to install the products, and to collect the money. God was certainly blessing our business. The sales never stopped increasing, and the profits at the bank just kept going up. The greatest pleasure we got was carving up the profits and getting them off our hands to give back to God. We would sit down and look at all the requests that came to us from around the South Pacific Division and then allocate according to their needs, mostly in our Christian education setup. How did I survive those 20 years on my own? Life wasn't easy. What, with 150 workers and thousands of selfish customers? Every day provided many challenges. I used to depend on my own abilities when I was a teacher, but now I was thrust into an environment where I had to totally depend upon God, because many of the problems were far greater than I had the answers for. My favourite text I had inscribed on my desk. Let me share it with you. Isaiah 43. Don't be afraid. When you're in over your head, I'll be there with you. When you're in rough waters, you won't go down. When you're between a rock and a hard place, it won't be a dead end. Because I am your God, your personal God. So don't be afraid. I'll be with you. Those 20 years took their toll on my health. And after a battle with cancer, I begged God to get me out. I didn't have a clue how to get out. But God made that possible. There were 2 overseas investors in the industry who knew of my business. And they hot-footed it to Australia to compete in who was going to get. They were absolutely gobsmacked that a business in this industry could produce such enormous profits. Looking back, I certainly experienced the miracle of God blessing something that started out so small, but using us to turn it into something so big. To God be the glory.
Right. So, corollary to that story. So, a few years after she sold the business, the guy who bought the business came to her and said, "Lorraine, did you cook the books?" Because he had never been able to make the same profits that the business had done under Lorraine's stewardship. Now, this lady, I don't know how much money she's put into the church. She gave basically all the profits from the business except money needed for the business to grow. So there's a group of us who do work in the Solomon Islands, and I don't know if you know Pastor Alex Curry. He was the pastor, I think, up at the Bowen Church when the rain was there. So he's always knocking on a door saying, "Can we have some more money for the Solomons?" And I'm guessing, I would think it's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars she's put into the Solomons. I had the privilege of opening a library that was named after her name. I know she's put money into other schools, other parts of the church. I have no idea how much, but it's a big number. But anyway, this guy came, said, "Did you cook the books?" And she said to him, No, I told you my secret. I was in partnership with God. So God can bless your business in an extraordinary way if you are in partnership with God and you use your business for a kingdom purpose. And that's really the whole message of this, is be intentional about what you do, build your business, but be intentional about working with God, because God can do amazing things through you, with you, and in your business. Let's just pray. Dear Father in heaven, we want to thank you that you are an innovative God, a God who just wants us to grow, to learn, to be not just faithful stewards, but to be faithful stewards who like to have a good time, who like to make money, but ideally for kingdom purposes. And we just want to thank you that you've given some people these skills, you've given some people the passion to build businesses because it's going to be tough. We also want to thank you that you've given people a sense of stewardship so that they can use the blessings that you've given to them your way for your glory. So I just pray for everybody here today that they will take these thoughts, that they will work out how to apply them in their lives, and if they've got a business, in their business too, for Jesus' sake. Amen. So here, just take one of those, but if you want, I can give you, no, just pass them on. Yeah. There's plenty. You can take two if you want. There's probably plenty. But if you want to write your name and email,